They didn't call, not in the morning, not by lunchtime, not even by dinner. And by then, I knew they wouldn't. Not my son, not my daughter, not even a lazy text from the grandchildren. 78 years, and I woke up to silence on my own birthday. I didn't cry. I boiled the kettle. I made toast. I fed the cat, wiped the sink, changed the hand towel in the guest bathroom no one had used in weeks. The routine held me steady, like it always had. At 3 in the afternoon, I sat in the living room and looked up at the family portrait, the one above the mantel. They were all there. Mark, with that college boy smile of his. Anna, standing too close to her husband, but too far from me. The grandchildren, Jake with his soccer ball, Emily in her recital dress, and me, sitting dead center, like a placeholder in a photo they didn't want to take. That day had been a fight. I remember sweating in my best blouse while they argued about lighting, complained about the drive, and scrolled through their phones between frames. Still, I'd wanted it. That one picture to remind me I'd built something. That all the missed vacations, the overtime shifts, the second-hand furniture, they'd turned into a family. My family. But this morning, when I checked the mailbox and found nothing but an electricity bill, something in me shifted. Not cracked. Snapped. Clean and final. I pushed back my chair, crossed the room, and reached for the frame. The photo was heavier than I remembered. Dust stuck to my fingertips as I lowered it down. I walked it to the hallway closet, opened the door, and placed it in the box where I kept wrapping paper and old candles. Then I closed the door. Not with anger, not even sadness. Just with the knowledge that I had stopped reminding people of who I was in their lives. And if they couldn't remember my birthday, I wouldn't remind them I existed. It wasn't just a picture, that frame above the mantel. It had been a promise. I remembered the day I insisted we take it. Mark didn't want to come, said weekends were his only time to rest. Anna had called me sentimental, like that was a weakness. But I stood my ground, said, "You'll show up. 1 hour. That's all I ask." They showed up late, of course. Mark with his shirt half-pressed, Anna with her daughter's hair undone. I had made lemon cookies, their favorite. Not one of them touched a single one. The photographer was a boy from down the street, polite but nervous. I'd picked him because he charged half the price and called me ma'am. We stood out in the garden, the early summer light just right. I remember holding Emily's hand. She was 6 then, and thinking, this is the last time we'll all be together like this. I didn't know why I thought it, but it stuck with me. The photo turned out lovely. Too lovely. Smiles perfect, posture just right. Strangers would think we were close, that we met for Sunday lunches, called each other just to say hello. They'd never guess that Anna hadn't hugged me in 5 years, or that Mark only visited when he needed help with taxes. I hung the picture anyway, right there above the fireplace, like a medal I wasn't sure I'd earned, but desperately wanted to believe in. Over time, it became a fixture. Guests would glance at it and say, "What a beautiful family." And I'd nod and say, "Thank you." Even if, by then, we were barely speaking. Funny thing is, I used to dust it more than any other frame in the house. I'd wipe the glass gently, straighten it if it leaned, like maybe the care I gave it would somehow reach them. A signal. I'm still here. I still care. But yesterday, when I took it down, the wall looked bare but honest. The ghost of a picture hook remained, a little scar on the paint. I left it there. Let it be seen. Let it remind me what I'd given and what had come back in return. Some things you fight for, others you stop dusting. The phone rang the next morning, around 10. I was steeping tea, watching the water cloud around the bag. Chamomile, no sugar, just the way I liked it before I started drinking what Anna insisted was heart-healthy green. I didn't pick up on the first ring, or the second. I let it ring 4 times before answering, just to feel like I had a choice in the matter. "Hi, Ma," Anna said, brisk as a nurse on shift. "Listen, I was wondering if you could come by tomorrow. Emily's got rehearsals and I have that client meeting. We could use you for a few hours." No hello. No, "How are you?" And certainly no mention of yesterday. I took a slow sip of tea. "Tomorrow?" I asked as if checking my calendar, though the only thing on it was a circled birthday. Now 2 days passed, still blank of ink. "Yes, just for the afternoon. From 2 to 6, maybe 7. You know how Emily gets after school, and I don't want her home alone. Mark's working late, of course." I stood by the kitchen window, watching a bird pick at the feeder I'd filled that morning. Small, gray, determined. "I won't be able to," I said finally. There was a pause. "Oh, really?" She sounded thrown, as if the word no had come from someone else's mouth entirely. "I have plans," I lied gently. Another pause, longer this time. "Well, it's just, you're usually free." "I've decided to take some time for myself," I said, still watching the bird. "Make room for what matters." Anna made a small sound, a scoff hidden as a cough. "Right. Okay, well, I'll figure something out." I didn't offer a suggestion, didn't jump to fix her day. The call ended a few seconds later, stiff with confusion. Afterward, I sat down in the quiet kitchen and realized something. That may have been the first time I'd told Anna no without cushioning it with guilt or apology. No explanations, no offers to rearrange, just a simple refusal. And the world didn't end. I looked over at the mantel. Bare now. A line of lighter paint where the photo used to hang. The absence felt cleaner than the presence ever did. Like I'd finally told the truth without needing words. I spent the rest of the morning reading the book I'd been putting off for months. Not because I didn't want to read, but because every time I picked it up, someone called. Needed something. Wanted me somewhere. Expected me to perform mom or grandma like a role in a play that no one watched but everyone demanded. I was 3 chapters in when the doorbell rang. Not many people came by without warning anymore. I opened the door cautiously, half expecting a delivery. It was Mrs. Lowry from next door. She was holding a casserole dish in both hands, her gray curls tucked under a knitted cap. "Just made extra," she said. "Thought you might want something warm." I blinked, caught off guard. "That's very kind." She smiled. "Saw the porch light on late last night. Figured you might have had a rough day." Something about her tone, not pity, but recognition, made my throat tighten. I nodded, stepped aside. She stayed only long enough to hand me the dish and pat my arm. "You ever want company? Just knock." When I closed the door, the warmth of the dish in my hands felt heavier than it should have. Not because of its weight, but because someone, even just a neighbor, had seen me. Later that evening, I reheated a portion and ate it in front of the television. I didn't check my phone. I didn't answer emails. I didn't wonder if anyone would remember or if belated wishes would trickle in like crumbs after a feast I hadn't been invited to. Instead, I thought about what I'd say. Next time someone asked for a favor, a ride, a signature, a loan, I'd say what I said today. No. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I had finally started remembering to love myself. He showed up unannounced. Mark, my son. No text, no call. Just the sound of tires on gravel and the slam of a car door that had never once pulled into my driveway without a reason. It was nearly 5 in the evening. I was folding laundry on the kitchen table, towels still warm from the dryer. I heard his knock, firm, like he expected the door to open immediately. I didn't rush. I finished folding the towel in my hands before answering. "Hey, Ma," he said, stepping inside before I could invite him. He glanced around like he was checking if someone else might be there. "Didn't catch you at a bad time, did I?" "You already caught me," I replied. He gave a half laugh. "Right. Well, I was in the neighborhood." Mark was never in the neighborhood. His office was 20 minutes north. His house, 30. My house existed only on his route when he needed something. I gestured toward the kettle. "Want tea?" "No, I'm good. I won't stay long." He sat at the table, shifting in the chair like it offended his posture. I sat opposite him and waited. "So," he started, and I could see the hesitation in the tight line of his mouth. "I've been meaning to ask, you remember that paperwork we talked about last year? The one for the house?" I nodded, slowly. "You mean the transfer of title?" Yeah, that. With everything going on, taxes, planning, you know how it is. It'd be simpler if we just put it in my name. Keeps it in the family anyway." He smiled like it was a favor to me. "Why now?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Well, with Anna and I considering some remodeling options, it makes more sense if the house is officially under my name. You don't have to worry about upkeep anymore. You've got enough on your plate." My eyes wandered to the window behind him. The hydrangeas were starting to bloom, late but stubborn, just like me. "I still live here," I said gently. Of course. You'd stay as long as you like. It's just a technical thing." I'd heard that tone before. That calm, efficient voice he used with clients, with waiters, with people he thought he was smarter than. "Have you had dinner?" I asked suddenly. Mark blinked. "What?" "Dinner? I made chicken stew. Enough for 2. He hesitated. "Ma, I really just came to—" "It's warming in the oven." He relented, leaning back in the chair. "Sure. Yeah, okay." I moved slowly, setting 2 bowls, 2 spoons. I ladled the stew and placed the bowl in front of him. He didn't thank me, just reached for a napkin. We ate in silence for a few minutes. He didn't look up until his bowl was half empty. "So, about the papers," he said again. "I'm not signing anything right now," I said, without raising my voice. "I've been thinking about things, about what I've given, what I still give." Mark's expression tightened. "It's not about taking anything from you. Maybe not, but it feels that way." He sat back, mouth open slightly, caught between protest and explanation. "I raised you in this house," I continued. "Your father painted that living room. You broke your wrist falling off that porch. This isn't just property. It's my life. And I'm still living it." Mark's jaw clenched. "I'm just trying to make things easier." "For whom?" I asked. He looked away, out the window. The silence between us settled like dust. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I won't be rushed. And I won't be told what's best for me without being asked what I want." He finished his stew without another word. When he stood to leave, he didn't hug me, just nodded and said, "Okay, Ma." I watched from the window as he walked to his car. He paused once, hand on the door, then got in and drove away. I turned back to the kitchen, rinsed the bowls, dried them slowly. I didn't lock the door behind him, but I didn't leave it open either. The knock came just after noon, softer this time, hesitant. I opened the door to see Nathan standing there, my eldest grandson, holding his backpack like a shield. "Hey, Grandma," he said, a sheepish smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Got a minute?" Nathan rarely came alone. Usually, it was Anna pushing him forward, saying, "Go say hi to Grandma," like I was a duty to perform. But now, he stood on my porch of his own accord, taller than I remembered, thinner, too. College was doing that to him. Long nights, microwaved food, stress in the bones. "I always have a minute for you," I said. He followed me into the kitchen, dropping his bag near the table. "I didn't tell Mom I was coming," he said, almost in a whisper. "Good," I replied, setting the kettle on. "It's nice to be surprised by someone I actually want to see." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. I guess you noticed nobody really remembered?" "I noticed," I said. And then I unnoticed. Took down the family photo and made myself a cake. "A cake?" "A very small one. Not worth sharing." Nathan looked guilty. "I'm sorry. I should have. I meant to." "You're not the one who owes me anything," I interrupted softly. "You're still young. You still get to forget sometimes." He looked up at me, eyes bright. "That's kind of what I came to talk about." I poured the tea, set the cups on the table, and waited. "I got into the summer program," he said finally. "The one in Portland?" I smiled. "That's wonderful. You worked hard." "Yeah, but it's not fully covered. I have to come up with the travel and housing. It's a lot. And I thought maybe, if it's not too much." There it was, the real reason. I wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of the rhythm, affection, need, request. It had become predictable. "Nathan," I said gently, "do you know how much I've paid toward your education so far?" He flushed. No. 26,000, I said. "Your parents never asked. They just let me send the checks. I didn't mind. I wanted you to have options." He stared at his tea. "I didn't know it was that much." "I never wanted you to know," I said. "But maybe it's time you did." A long silence stretched between us. "I can get a part-time job this summer," he said. "Cut costs. Figure something out." I reached across the table and touched his hand. "Or we can do something different. Something better." He looked up. "I'll fund it," I said. "The whole summer. Travel, housing, meals. But not as a handout. I want to set up a trust for you, not your parents. You." "A trust?" he repeated, like the word was too big for his mouth. "You'll have access when you turn 25. Earlier if it's for school or emergencies. But there'll be rules and expectations." He blinked. "You'd really do that?" "I want to," I said. "Because I believe in you. But it comes with one condition." "What's that?" "No more pretending I don't exist unless you need something. No more birthdays forgotten. No more polite silences when your parents speak for you." Nathan swallowed hard. "That's fair." "I don't want thanks," I added. "I want truth. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's messy." He nodded slowly. "Okay, Grandma." I smiled. "Then we have a deal." When he left an hour later, he hugged me. Not a rushed, dutiful squeeze, but a long, quiet embrace. The kind that says more than words can hold. After he walked out the door, I sat at the table and stared at the teacups. Maybe the next generation still had hope in it. Maybe that was enough. It was nearly midnight when I found myself in the attic, barefoot, holding a flashlight in one hand and a blanket draped over my shoulders. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of echoes, of thoughts, of names you no longer speak aloud. I hadn't been up there in years. The ladder creaked beneath me like an old friend offering one last warning. Dust hovered in the beam of light as I stepped onto the wooden floorboards. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but I knew what I hoped to find. It was in the far corner, under an old quilt and a box labeled Xmas Lights in my late husband's handwriting, a crate full of his things, belts, a pipe he never smoked, a coin jar half full, and a folder marked simply D. I sat cross-legged on the floor, knees aching, and opened it. Inside were drawings, plans, scribbled numbers. Derek had been a carpenter by trade, but a dreamer at heart. He once told me he wanted to build us a lake cabin, just the two of us, somewhere quiet. He never got the chance. Life had bills and children and demands that always came first. But he never threw the drawings away. Beneath the papers was a letter, unopened, addressed to me in his tidy, all-caps handwriting. I recognized the envelope. He'd written it a week before the surgery that ended with him not waking up. I'd tucked it away, unable to bear the words then. I opened it now. Hell, it began, the only person who ever called me that. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. Don't let grief turn you into a ghost. Don't give the kids your whole heart. Save some for yourself. You're going to need it. You always gave more than was asked of you, and I worry that one day they'll forget where the giving ends. Don't let them. Set your boundaries. Speak your no. Be kind, but never invisible. I'll be watching. I expect to be proud. There was no signature, just his name in the corner. Derek. I sat there a long time, the flashlight dimming in my lap. The old house groaned around me, wood settling as if listening. He had seen it all coming. Not the specifics, not the missed birthday, the title papers, the guilt in our grandson's eyes. But the pattern. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the front pocket of my robe. Then I sat there in the dark, remembering the way he used to steady me without touching me. A presence, not pressure. A weight that didn't burden. When I climbed back down the ladder, I felt like I'd brought something with me. Not just the letter, but a clarity I hadn't had in years. I wouldn't be bitter. I wouldn't be cruel. But I would no longer be quiet. They'd taken my silence for permission. That was their mistake. And now it was time to correct it. The bank smelled like lemon floor polish and waiting. I arrived 10 minutes before it opened and waited on the wooden bench just inside the vestibule, watching a young man in a suit fiddle with keys on the other side of the glass door. He nodded politely when he noticed me. I nodded back. The moment the door clicked open, I stepped inside. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, bright-eyed and unsure if I needed help finding the deposit slips. "Someone will be with you in just a moment." "I have an appointment," I replied. "With Ellen McKay." He pointed toward the offices in the back. "She'll be right out." I hadn't seen Ellen in years, not since she handled the small loan Derek and I took out to fix the roof when Mark left for college. She had thinner hair now, wore glasses with purple frames, but the same steady way of speaking. She called me by name before I even introduced myself. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, shaking my hand. "Come on back." Her office had 2 chairs, a plant that was either very fake or very hardy, and a photo of her daughter in a graduation cap. I sat down and pulled a folded sheet of paper from my purse. A list I'd made last night after rereading Derek's letter. The trust I'd promised Nathan, still fresh in my mind. "I'd like to update my accounts," I said. "All of them." Ellen smiled, ready with her keyboard. "Of course. What would you like to change?" "I want to remove Mark and Anna from everything. Joint access, beneficiaries, power of attorney." "Everything." She paused. "All right. May I ask why?" No offense, I said, but I didn't come here to explain. She didn't blink. Understood. We can get that started. Do you want to assign a new power of attorney? Yes. Nathan Whitmore, my grandson. Limited rights. Only to access the trust I'm setting up for him. He won't have access to anything else unless I authorize it. She nodded and typed. And I'd like to remove the automatic transfers to Anna's mortgage account and Mark's vehicle loan. Both were under my discretionary approval. I'm withdrawing that approval. There was a small silence as her fingers stilled. Those have been active for a few years now. 18 years, I said. Since the first time Mark forgot his car payment. Ellen didn't respond to that. She simply adjusted her glasses and resumed typing. And the trust? She asked. Yes. I want to fund it with a portion of my savings. $60,000 for now. He can use it for education, relocation, or investment when he turns 25. I'll retain oversight. She printed several forms and laid them out with practiced ease. We'll need signatures and identification. I handed over my ID and took the pen. The act of signing felt different this time. Not like I was giving something away, but like I was reclaiming it. Every loop of my signature was a choice, a boundary, a small declaration. By the time we finished, Ellen leaned back and said, "Everything will be effective by end of business today." I nodded. "Thank you." "Mrs. Whitmore," she said gently, "if you ever need someone to talk to, outside of money, I'm happy to listen." I met her eyes and smiled. I'm not lonely. Just late to a lesson I should have learned years ago. She walked me to the front, and I stepped out into the daylight, which felt brighter than when I'd gone in. I didn't rush home. I stopped at the bakery for a slice of lemon pie and sat at the park bench where Derek once proposed. He'd be proud, I thought, not of the paperwork, but of the spine in my back and the silence I'd finally learned to break. The calls started at 4:32 p.m. First Anna, then Mark, then both in rapid alternation, as if they'd coordinated a campaign. I let the phone buzz quietly on the kitchen table while I prepared dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a roast chicken and some green beans sautéed with garlic, the kind of meal you make when you're alone, but still want to treat yourself like someone worth feeding. By 6:30 p.m., I had 13 missed calls and 6 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. It was only when my landline rang, the number hardly anyone used anymore, that I finally picked up. Old habits. That phone still made me feel like someone respectable was on the other end. "Mother," Anna's voice, tight with panic. "Have you changed the bank settings? I tried to make the mortgage payment and it bounced twice." I carried the phone to the living room and sat in my chair by the window, cradling the receiver like it might burn. "Yes," I said calmly. There was a long silence. "Why?" "Because I'm done pretending that being your mother means financing your life." She let out a short, nervous laugh. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about years of quiet withdrawals. Not just from my accounts, Anna. From me. Every time you needed something, I was there. And now, you can't remember to call on my birthday. That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But I'm done waiting for fair." She was quiet for a beat. "So you're just cutting us off?" "I'm reclaiming what's mine. My money. My peace. My place in this family. Or out of it. You could have talked to us. I did. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. That was me talking. You just weren't listening." Another silence. This one longer. Then, in a clipped voice, "Mark's going to call you. You've upset everything." "He already did." I didn't answer. I hung up, and turned off the ringer. I ate my dinner by the window, watching the sun slide down behind the neighbor's fence. The phone flashed once or twice in the other room, but I didn't move. By 8:15, there was a knock at the door. I didn't need to guess who it was. I opened it slowly and found Mark on the porch, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, jaw tight. "You changed everything at the bank," he said. No greeting. "I did. No warning? You've had plenty. You just didn't see it." He looked past me, into the hallway, like maybe someone would step out and tell him this was all a mistake. "So that's it? You're cutting your own children off?" "I'm redefining what I owe and what I don't." He stepped back, eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this." I nodded slowly. "Maybe, but not today." Mark stared at me for a moment longer, then turned and walked to his car, slamming the door harder than necessary. When the house was quiet again, I walked to the mantel and looked at the space where the family portrait used to hang. I didn't regret taking it down. Not one bit. I no longer needed a picture to prove I had a family. The phone blinked silently in the other room. I left it there. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. It was Margaret who finally knocked. Not family, not obligation, just an old friend with too much honesty in her eyes to be anything but real. She arrived the next afternoon with a jar of raspberry preserves and a loaf of bread she'd made herself. Said she had a feeling and didn't press when I didn't invite her in right away. Just stood on the porch, looking at me like I was still the Helen she'd met 40 years ago at the church book sale. "You want tea or something stronger?" I asked eventually. She smiled. "You know I always want both." We sat in the kitchen, the bread sliced between us, steam curling from our mugs. I hadn't spoken aloud about any of it, not to Nathan, not to the bank manager, not even to myself in any complete way. But when Margaret took her first sip and said, "You look lighter," the words started coming. I told her about the birthday, about the empty mailbox and the family photo in the box of old decorations, about Mark and Anna, about the bank, about Nathan. I didn't dramatize or sugarcoat. I just told it straight, the way you only can when you're not seeking pity, just understanding. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix it. She listened. "That's the thing, isn't it?" I said finally. "You give, and somehow they convince you that it's your job, like you were hired to love them without limits." Margaret nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "And when you finally set one, a boundary, a single line, it's like you've betrayed them." I laughed, but it came out more bitter than amused. I was supposed to stay quiet and generous, a well with no bottom. "But you're not a well," she said. "You're a woman, a damn strong one." I met her eyes and felt something settle in me. Not peace exactly, but something close. Like I'd finally stopped holding my breath. "You know," she said after a while, "I always wondered how long it would take you." "For what?" "To stop being the quiet saint and start being Helen again." I looked at her. Really looked. This woman who had seen me through births and funerals, who never asked for money or favors, who brought bread instead of excuses. "How do you do it?" I asked. "Keep your distance and still stay close to your kids?" Margaret smiled, not smugly, just like someone who'd bled the same kind of wounds. "I don't let them treat me like a convenience. I love them. But I don't forget to love myself, too." I nodded, slowly. "It's just hard. You spend so long trying to prove you're worth keeping, and one day you realize they never needed convincing. They just needed you to keep giving. Well, you stopped." She broke off another piece of bread. "Good, Let them feel the absence for once. The clock ticked. The light shifted. We didn't talk much after that, just sat and shared a quiet, bread and butter kind of comfort. Not flashy, not loud, but real. When Margaret finally stood to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual. "You need anything," she said. "You call me, not because you owe me, because I want you to." And when she left, I sat alone, but not lonely. Not anymore. For the first time in a long while, I realized maybe I hadn't lost my family. Maybe I'd just found a clearer picture of who they really were, and who I really was without them. Nathan came by the next evening. No text ahead, no anxious knocking, just a soft call from the porch. "Grandma, it's me." I opened the door to see him standing there in jeans too long at the ankle and a hoodie that looked like it had seen a few too many nights on a dorm couch. In his hands, a paper bag from that little bakery I liked downtown. "I brought the apple tarts you used to get," he said. "Thought maybe we could share one." I stepped aside, let him in without a word. He knew where the plates were. That, more than the tarts, almost undid me. We sat at the table in a silence that didn't feel heavy, just honest. He took a bite first, then wiped his mouth like he was preparing for a hard conversation. "I heard what happened," he said finally. "From who?" "Everyone," he muttered. "Mom, Dad. Uncle George even called, like I'm supposed to fix it." I took a small bite. The tart was warm, a little too sweet, but familiar in a way that caught my chest. "They're angry," he said. "You know that." "I know. They think you've lost your mind, that someone's influencing you, that maybe you're, I don't know, depressed." That made me smile, a bitter little thing. "I'm not depressed, Nathan. I'm awake." He looked down at his plate, then up again, eyes clear. "I told them they were wrong." "Did you?" "Yeah. I said maybe you just got tired of being invisible." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. "I'm proud of you, you know," he said. I shook my head slightly. "That's not your job." "Maybe not, but I am." I stood, walked over to the sideboard, and opened the top drawer. From inside, I pulled a manila envelope. Thick, sealed, ready. I laid it on the table between us. "What's this?" he asked, touching it gently. "Your future," I said. "Or at least a part of it. It's the paperwork for the trust. The one we discussed." He froze. "You actually did it?" "I did. 60,000 to start. More if needed. You won't have full access until you're 25, but you can use it for school, relocation, or if life throws something at you and you don't want to go crawling to people who think support is a negotiation." He looked stunned, like he wanted to argue or thank me or say something grand. I stopped him. "There's one condition." "Anything." "No pretending," I said. "If we're in each other's lives, it's by choice, not guilt, not performance. You can disagree with me. You can be mad, but you don't get to vanish when it's easier." He nodded slowly. "Deal." "And one more thing," I added. "This doesn't make you my favorite. It makes you the only one who asks the right questions." His laugh broke something loose in the room. "I'll take it." We talked for over an hour after that. About the program in Portland, about the girl he liked, about how strange it was to realize your parents weren't always right. When he left, he hugged me again. Not out of obligation, but the way someone hugs home. I watched from the window as he walked down the drive, the porch light casting his long shadow behind him. The trust was just money, but the agreement? That was something more. A beginning. On my terms. The card came in the mail 2 days later. Pale blue envelope My name written in Anna's careful, looping script, the kind she used for holiday labels and thank you notes to her husband's clients. I held it for a while before opening it. There was no return address, no decoration, just the card inside. A pale watercolor flower on the front. Inside, 2 lines. "We're sorry for forgetting your birthday. Let's make it up to you. Dinner this Saturday, our treat. The whole family. No name, no signature. Just we. The same we that always meant her and Mark, speaking in one voice when it suited them. A team, a front, a united front against what? Accountability? I didn't RSVP. I didn't call. Saturday came anyway. At 6:30, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Anna got out first, in heels too high for the season, clutching a foil-wrapped tray. Behind her, Mark emerged, wearing a blazer he reserved for dinner parties. Jake and Emily stepped out last, dressed nicer than usual, looking anywhere but at the front door. I was sitting in the living room, lights dimmed, book on my lap, window cracked just enough to hear them hesitate at the porch. "Maybe she didn't see the card," Anna whispered. Mark muttered something back. I caught the word pride. Jake rang the bell. I didn't answer. They stood there a few minutes longer. Another ring, then a knock, then nothing. Eventually, I heard the SUV start again. The crunch of gravel. The slow retreat of tires down the street. I didn't feel victorious. But I didn't feel guilty either. Later that night, the doorbell rang once more. A softer sound this time, like someone unsure if they had the right house. When I opened it, it was Emily, alone. She stood on the porch in a soft gray coat, holding a Tupperware container. "Hi, Grandma," she said. "They're at dinner. I told them I forgot my phone at home." I stepped aside. She came in quietly, set the container on the counter and said, "It's just lasagna. Mom said not to bring it, but I thought, maybe you'd want something warm later." I studied her. 17 now. Awkward in a way that had more honesty than artifice. Her voice didn't carry her mother's clipped edges or her father's exhaustion. "You remembered my birthday?" I asked. She nodded. "I wrote a card, but Mom didn't send it. She said, well, never mind what she said." I reached out, touched her arm. "Sit down." We ate at the kitchen table. Not the lasagna. Cookies from a tin, the kind she used to help me bake when she was 8. She told me about school, about how she hated choir now, about her best friend who dyed her hair green without asking her mom. I listened, the way I always had, and didn't ask for more than she offered. When she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. "Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart. I know they messed up. I don't want to pick sides." "You don't have to," I said softly. "Just keep showing up. That's all I ever wanted." She hugged me tightly, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, some parts of the story were still being rewritten. Not because they deserved a second chance, but because I did. It was Diane who called first. Not a family member, not an old friend, but my next-door neighbor from 2 houses down. The one with the wind chimes that never stopped clinking, and the marigolds she replanted every spring like she was trying to outbloom the year before. "Thought you might be tired of your own company," she said. "A few of us are getting together tonight. Nothing fancy. Just soup and stories." I almost said no. I'd grown used to the hush of the house, the rhythm of quiet evenings. But something in her voice made me pause. Not pity, not nosiness. Just warmth. "I'll bring bread," I said, before I could overthink it. 6 women sat around Diane's living room that night, all over 60, some well over. None of them wore makeup. All of them wore thick socks. Someone brought a pie. Someone else brought stories about grandchildren and leaky plumbing and which bones hurt worse in the rain. They made room for me without fuss, as if I'd always been part of the circle. I took the spot by the bookshelf, placed the bread on the table, and listened. For the first hour, I didn't speak, just nodded and laughed when they did, taking in the way they teased each other, how their silences didn't feel awkward, how no one tried to fix or outshine anyone else. At some point, Nora, a sharp-eyed widow with a voice like gravel and molasses, turned to me and said, "You've been quiet, Helen. You got a story for us?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "I used to think birthdays were about cake and cards." A few of them chuckled. Someone said, "Weren't they?" "Maybe. But now I think they're just a yearly audit," I said. "A moment where you get to check your balance sheet. Who's still around? Who shows up? Who doesn't? What kind of woman you've been, and whether that's who you want to keep being." They went quiet then, not unkindly, just letting it settle. "That's a better definition than anything Hallmark ever came up with," Diane finally said. Gloria, a retired nurse who always wore bangles, leaned forward. "So, who didn't show up this year?" "My whole family," I said simply. "Not one call, not even a lie to cover it, and now they're sorry, loudly and inconveniently." Nora raised an eyebrow. "And what did you do about it?" "I took down their picture," I said. "And then I started putting my name back on my own life." A murmur of approval rippled through the group. Diane passed me a second helping of soup. "Well, happy birthday, Helen." "To Helen," someone echoed, raising a mismatched tea mug. I smiled, not from politeness, but because it felt good. Not flattery, not praise, just recognition. They didn't ask for details. They didn't ask for forgiveness on behalf of people who hadn't earned it. They just passed the bread, refilled my cup, and let me sit among them without explanation or justification. It was one of the best evenings I'd had in years. On the walk home, the cold air didn't bother me the way it used to. The porch light glowed softly, and the wind had knocked a few leaves against the screen door. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, heart full but unburdened. There was no voicemail waiting, no last-minute apology from Mark, no surprise visit from Anna. Just the house, still and warm, exactly as I left it. I didn't miss them, not tonight. What I'd found was something smaller, quieter, but far more true. A table where I didn't have to earn my seat. A room where no one measured me by how much I gave. A circle where being present was enough. And maybe that, I thought, as I turned out the light, was the celebration I'd been waiting for all along. I sat at the dining table with a yellow legal pad and a pen that clicked too loudly in the quiet. The morning sun spilled across the wood grain, and for once, I didn't open the curtains fully. Some things felt better in soft light, especially decisions that had taken too long to make. The will was old, 5 years out of date. At the time, I thought I was being prudent. Fair. Everything split evenly. Mark, Anna. A little aside for the grandkids. It was what was expected, what people did. You raise children, you build a life, and then eventually you leave it behind like a folded note with your signature at the bottom. But now I didn't want to leave behind anything that didn't reflect who I'd become. So I called my lawyer. Not one of those slick ones downtown with teeth like piano keys, but Mr. Blake, Harold, who had known Derek and who still wore corduroy even in July. "I'd like to amend my will," I said when his assistant put me through, "and set up something a little more accurate." He knew better than to ask what changed. "Come in Monday," he said. "Bring your current copy and whatever you'd like to add." I hung up and looked around my house. The photos, the books, the chipped china I still used every Sunday. It was all mine again, in a way it hadn't been in decades. Mine not because I held the deed or because my name was on the bank statements, but because no one was pretending otherwise. On Monday, I wore the navy wool coat Derek used to say made me look too sharp for this town. I brought the legal pad, the old will, and a small envelope with a handwritten note for Nathan. Mr. Blake didn't ask questions when I handed him the papers. Just put on his glasses and read with the patience of a man who understood that some stories couldn't be rushed. "I want Nathan to be the primary beneficiary," I said. "Not for everything. I'm not punishing the others. I'm just choosing who sees me as a person, not a resource." He nodded, scribbled a few notes. "You want to remove your children from the primary line. I want them to receive something symbolic. A letter, a photograph. Something that reminds them they had a mother. What they did with her is their legacy, not mine." He looked up at that, not surprised, just solemn. "And the house?" he asked. "Stays in my name. When the time comes, it goes to Nathan. He can keep it, sell it, burn it down. I trust him to decide with care." Mr. Blake made the changes while I watched. Each line typed felt like a stone lifted from my back. I didn't feel vindictive. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth to remain, even when I couldn't speak it anymore. We signed the drafts, and I left a copy with his secretary. When I stepped outside, the wind was biting, but I didn't shiver. I walked slowly back to my car, hand on the envelope in my coat pocket. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote 3 letters. One for Mark, one for Anna, and one for Emily, who had tried, who had knocked, who had brought lasagna and sat with me like I was more than a footnote. Each letter was short. Not angry, just honest. I told Mark I remembered the day he first called me Mommy and how my heart had broken open like spring soil. I told Anna I had once thought she was the daughter I never had, and how I'd tried, Lord knows I tried, to love her like one. And I told Emily that the door would always be open, but only if she came through it as herself, not someone else's echo. I sealed each one and placed them in a drawer with instructions for Mr. Blake to deliver them when the time came. Then I sat back, took a long breath, and stared at the space above the mantel. Still bare. Still better that way. Because some legacies aren't built on bloodlines. They're built on clarity, on boundaries, and on the quiet decision to leave behind only what reflects the truth. It was Anna's handwriting again, this time on a cream-colored envelope, no card inside. Just a single sheet of lined paper, folded carefully, like it was meant to be taken seriously. I found it tucked into my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. She must have driven it over and left it herself, too proud to knock, too stubborn to stay away entirely. I didn't read it right away. I made tea first, toasted a slice of bread, let the radio hum quietly in the background with a station that played only piano. Only then, when the kettle had cooled and the air in the kitchen had settled, did I sit down and open it. Mom, I don't know what to say that doesn't sound defensive or insincere. Maybe I waited too long to say anything at all. Maybe that's part of the problem. I know we forgot your birthday. I know we've forgotten other things too. Things bigger than dates. Time spent. Questions not asked. Thank yous that never made it out loud. We got comfortable. That's the word that keeps coming back to me. Comfortable with you always being there. Always saying yes. Always picking up the slack. I don't think I realized how many of our routines depended on your silence. And now the silence has changed. It has shape. It says something. And I hear it. I really do. You don't owe us anything, Mom. But I hope it's not too late to try being something other than what we've been. I'm sorry. For forgetting. For assuming. For shrinking you down into someone who didn't need thanks. Love. Anna. I read it twice, then folded it and placed it under my mug like a coaster, letting the weight of my tea warm it through. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic or poetic. But it was the first time I'd seen an apology that wasn't wrapped in demands. I didn't call her. Not that day. Maybe not tomorrow either. But I didn't tear it up. Didn't tuck it into a drawer to be forgotten with old receipts and warranty slips. I left it there, on the table, where I'd see it. Where I could decide, in my own time, what to do with it. Later, while washing dishes, I thought of something Derek once said. Years ago, when we were first married. Back when forgiveness was still a skill we were both learning. Not everything has to be mended right away, he'd said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Some things heal better when you let them breathe first. That night, I opened the window before bed. The air was sharp with late spring chill, and the moon hung low over the neighbor's garage. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and went quiet again. I didn't feel peace exactly, but I didn't feel alone. Not in the way I used to, where silence meant being unseen. This silence was mine, earned, intentional, and I was learning to trust it. I thought of Anna's letter, of Emily's lasagna, of Nathan's envelope still waiting in the desk drawer, untouched, sealed, a future promised without strings. They were learning, slowly, clumsily, but the wheel had turned. They had felt the weight of my absence. And maybe, just maybe, they were beginning to understand that love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes it means saying no with both feet planted, both hands still, and a heart finally done begging. I turned off the light and let the darkness come in quiet and clean. One more chapter left, and it would be mine to write. It was early morning when I found the new frame, a simple wooden one, tucked away at the back of the hall closet, wrapped in the same tissue paper I'd used to store Christmas ornaments years ago. I hadn't been looking for it. I'd just gone to grab a scarf, but my hand landed on something smoother, firmer. When I pulled it out, I knew immediately what it was for. I set it on the dining table, unwrapped it slowly, and looked at the blank space behind the glass. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and thought. I hadn't hung anything over the mantel since taking down the family portrait. The space had stayed empty, not in grief, not in defiance, but as a kind of quiet ritual, an honest void. I didn't replace it with flowers or clocks, or those overly cheerful signs women my age are supposed to love. Just bare paint. And it had felt good. True. But that morning, something in me shifted. Not toward forgiveness, not entirely, but toward something softer. I pulled out a small stack of photographs from the drawer near the stove. Some old, some recent. I sifted through them, fingertips grazing memories printed in glossy rectangles. Me and Diane at the neighborhood potluck. Margaret, mid-laugh. Flour on her shirt from our failed attempt at cinnamon rolls. Emily, holding up a too small sweater she found in my attic, smiling like she'd uncovered buried treasure. I chose one. It was taken 2 weeks ago by Nora with her ancient Polaroid. The six of us, sitting in Diane's living room. Soup bowls empty, socks mismatched, and a warmth between us that couldn't be staged. I was there, in the center. Not because I asked to be, not because I'd fought to be seen, but because they'd made space, and I'd filled it. I placed the photo in the frame and stood back. It wasn't dramatic, just quiet and right. I carried it into the living room and held it against the wall for a long moment. Then, with steady hands, I hammered a single nail into the plaster and hung it. It sat smaller than the old family portrait, less formal, more real. And when I stepped back, I felt something ease inside me, like a page had been turned, not ripped out. A little later, the mail came. Just 2 envelopes, a utility bill and a small card with no return address. Inside was a note on plain stationery. Thinking of you today. Thank you for teaching me that love isn't always about sacrifice. Sometimes it's about choosing yourself and letting others rise to meet you. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was from Nathan. I placed it on the mantel just beneath the new frame. That afternoon, I took a walk. Not long, not fast. Just enough to feel the air, to let my body remind me it was still capable of movement, still part of the world. Neighbors waved. A couple of kids rode by on bikes. One of them, I think her name is Lucy, called out, "Hi, Miss Helen," like she meant it. When I came home, the house was quiet. But it wasn't lonely. Not anymore. The phone sat silent on the counter. No new messages, no apologies, no demands. Just the soft hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, and a woman, 78 years old, standing in a room she had taken back, one choice at a time. At dinner, I lit a candle. Just one. Not for company, not for memory, but for presence. For myself. After eating, I sat in my chair by the window and opened my notebook. Not the legal pad, the real one. The one where I wrote things not for lawyers or banks, but for me. And at the top of the next blank page, I wrote, "This is what comes next." Then I began to write, not what I owed, not what was taken, but what was still mine to build. If you've read this far, thank you. And if something in these words settled inside you, even quietly, leave a comment or share it. Stories like these are how we remind each other we're not invisible. Not yet.